Calix Boxing 2.0 over here on YouTube. Appreciate all the new subs. Appreciate the people who've been coming through. Appreciate all the archive views. The archive views have been great. Keep those archive views coming, and make sure you're watching in the archives to leave a comment below. Leave a comment below. I appreciate the likes, but make sure to leave a comment below. That way I know who's commenting. You disagree with me, I appreciate the disagreements as much as the agreements, so please leave the disagreements. And if you're in the chat currently, shout out my guy Punch Perfect Boxing. That dude's the truth, man. Lower weight classes, everything. That dude pays attention to everything. I follow his channel religiously now, so that dude is the truth. So if you're watching on the archives, go give him a follow. Kid Gruesome, ambient fight. Yep. The event was beautiful, though. I was out in Vegas. The event was beautiful. I caught some grief from my wife because I put out a tweet of how beautiful the Mexican women were out there. And she left me a screenshot early in the morning. She's like, what is this? You love Mexican women now? What is this? What is this? I'm like, my wife, you're beautiful. You're the most beautiful woman on earth. God put you down here strictly for me. You are the most beautiful woman on earth. All I'm saying is Mexican women are also beautiful. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Just saying. I had to delete the tweet, though. I deleted the tweet. So, man, Canelo brought him out. Canelo brought out the casuals. He brought out the casuals. You have people there who don't follow boxing. You have people there who weren't following the undercard fights, but they're out there for Canelo. Concerts going on everywhere after the fight. He brought them out, and he brought out the Latinas. That I can guarantee you. Callis got caught. You were speaking the truth. I'm sure there were Latinas everywhere, and they were. And yeah, we'll talk about the fight. We'll talk about how it was a letdown overall. It was. Lackluster fight, but a great event. And we'll talk about the Canelo hate that's coming out as a result of all this. We'll address that because the false narratives have to be addressed. I used to be of the thought that you just let them go, right? And you just concentrate on what you need to concentrate as far as your content, as far as your channel. Just concentrate on breaking down what you saw. But the false narratives need to be addressed, because if the false narratives aren't addressed, and they're increasingly not addressed, because people just don't want to deal with the trolls. They don't want to deal with the trollism. But it needs to be addressed because it gains momentum. It snowballs. And then the people start to believe the false narratives. And then you get the false narrative that Canelo don't want to fight any Mexicans. Oh, my God. Canelo's ducking David Benavidez. Oh, my God. Canelo's ducking a guy who isn't fighting anybody. Canelo's ducking a guy who's fought half the amount of fights against lesser competition that he's fought in the past 21 months. Canelo's fought 6 times in the past 21 months. David Benavidez has fought 3 times in the past 21 months. And David Benavidez is on the bum of the month club. He just fought an 87 gazillion-year-old David Lemieux. And I'm supposed to believe that this dude is the boogeyman. And he looks the part. He's talented. That's the thing. That's the thing I hate about this. Is I want to like all of these dudes. I want to like David Benavidez. I want to like 160 Charlo. I want to like David Morrell Jr., but Al's not letting him fight anybody. Come on. And I'm supposed to believe this dude's the boogeyman. It is what it is. The divorce papers were waiting for you when you come back home. GGG at 40. I appreciate this, D. 34 40. GGG at 40 does better than Billy Joe Saunders, Plant, and Smith. And that's what I'll get into as I break down the fight. We'll speak about I know what I saw from Golovkin on Saturday night. I saw an aged fighter. I saw a very much aged fighter. It's a little more unclear when it comes to Canelo because he shows a lot of respect for Golovkin even at that older age. And I'll break that down as I break down the fight. So it's a little more unclear of where Canelo is in his career and what we actually saw from Canelo on Saturday night, but I'm going to break that down in a bit. I wanted to touch on the Bam Rodriguez fight first, because I feel some false narration coming out of that fight as well, but definitely appreciate this D3440. My guy, Chicano Prophet. The fight was lackluster. His Bam performance was lackluster. I don't know what was in the water this past Saturday, and I'm about to hit on that. Chauncey, because I know we had a difference of opinion on Saturday night, and that's why, once again, I have an intelligent chat, and I have a chat where we can have disagreements and still be friends. And Chauncey, I know we had disagreement on Saturday night about what we saw from Bam, and I'm about to touch on that. He wouldn't let his hands go. Yeah. GG beat Canelo in fight 1, and I was called a draw. GG did better in fight 2, and they called it a loss for Triple G. Now won like 2 or 3 rounds. I had him winning. The scorecards. It was weird. This fight was weird in that in the first 2 fights, you could say Canelo got the benefit of the doubt in pretty much all the rounds. And then this fight, they gave Golovkin more than the benefit of the doubt on the scorecards. I didn't see 4 rounds. Did anybody see 4 rounds to give Golovkin? And look, I'm not saying that. I know people, good boxing minds, have said, you know what? I think possibly Golovkin won 9 through 12. Fair enough. All I'm saying is I thought 9 through 12 was comparative rounds as compared to 1 through 8 because Canelo swept 1 through 8. I didn't see a round in 1 through 8 that you could have given Golovkin. And then 9 through 12, it was a weird thing. The Canelo fans actually started cheering when Golovkin was doing well in round 9 or had some moments because they just wanted to see a fight at that point. And at that point, we all knew where it was going. It was going towards a Canelo decision. And that's why I kept telling people. And I was wrong about the fight being entertaining. I thought this would be the most entertaining fight of the 3, and it was not. But what I was right about was decision. Everything was trending decision. I never understood this Canelo's going to knock Golovkin out thing. Canelo's going to stop Golovkin. It didn't materialize, and it was clear early in the fight that it was not going to materialize. And I kept telling people, hammer the decision. And people should have, and maybe some people missed out on that. But I don't know, man. It was clear and evident early on where this fight was going. It was clear that it was a Canelo night. It was clear that Golovkin was way past it. And it was clear that we were headed towards a decision. And that's what happened. Let me get to a couple more of these comments before I get on the Bam Rodriguez fight. Bedford Boxing gave him rounds. I saw 3. No way he won more than 3. No, I don't see it either, man. Triple G didn't sweep anything. That's right. I don't think he swept 9 through 12 either. I think it was just a comparative from the first 8 rounds. The judges wanted to make it look like the first 2 fights cards looked unbiased. Maybe so. And maybe the judges just felt like the fight's already over. Let me throw Golovkin some things. But that's not how you score a fight. You just score a fight. Each round is a different fight. Score the fight. You wash away your memory, and I know it's human nature, comparative rounds, but wash away your memory if you're a great judge and score each round as a different fight. And I think if you would have done that, I don't see how you can find 4 rounds for Golovkin. Certainly not 5. When I saw when they did 116, 112 twice, I was like, what is this? And then I expected it to be like 119, 109, the third card. And when it was 115, 113, I was like, what is this? Are they just going to give this to Golovkin now? I don't know. Let me say this. Israel Gonzalez fought a good fight against Bam Rodriguez. And one thing that I was wrong about going in to Friday night was I thought that Bam Rodriguez initially was going to stop Israel Gonzalez. Luckily, I was around great boxing minds this past weekend. And shout out to Miguel Cotto, my guy. I got to talk to him for about an hour with Steve Kim. Shout out to Steve Kim. He's a real one. Talked a lot with him this past weekend. Real dude. My guy Drew, the real Sancho over on Twitter, another real one. We chopped it up a lot. Jim Boom, KO Tickets, real one. My guy Christian, real one. I got to talk to a lot of smart people and fun people over the past week. Had a lot of fun. Had a ton of fun. And had to explain to my wife why Mexican women are beautiful, but at the same time, I didn't look at anything. I just had my eyes closed, but I could still tell they were beautiful. But anyway, Friday night at the bar, I'm saying, Bam, I'm about to go to the sports book. I'm hammering more. I'm hammering Golovkin and Canelo decision. I'm obviously on that one heavy. That's gimme. They're giving away free money with that one. I'm hopping on the minus 150 decision. But I'm also hopping on Bam Rodriguez by stoppage. I think he's going to stop Israel Gonzalez. And then I had an OG from New Orleans that I also met, my guy Sam from down here in New Orleans in his 50s, goes to a ton of boxing visits. He's like, don't bet that. Don't bet it. Bam's great, but don't bet it. This dude's tough. Do not bet that bet. I was like, you sure? And then Jim Boom also told me the same thing in a separate conversation. KO tickets. He's like, this dude's tough. This dude fighting Bam. He's tough. These odds are way off. He's tough. I'm telling you. I was like, I'm going to listen to these dudes. They sound like they know what they're talking about. They're smart. And they were right. Watching this fight, it was evident early on that Israel Gonzalez was not there to lay down. It was also evident that he's better than his 28-4-1 record going into the fight. It's also evident that he was much better than the odds makers gave him credit for because he was active. He did not fear Bam Rodriguez. He jumped on him early. He said, this guy's fighting quarterly. Let me jump on him early to see if he's got a little wear and tear from the year. And I also overheard something Friday that Bam didn't necessarily want to fight this weekend. I just overheard that from some conversation I was hearing that Bam wanted to take a little break before December or so, and he was told by somebody in his camp, you get your ass in camp. We're working now. We're trying to make you a star. You're going to fight 4 times this year. You're going to continue to fight quarterly. So anyway, all that added together, Bam Rodriguez fights Israel Gonzalez, and I felt Bam Rodriguez comfortably won the fight. This is where sort of me and Chauncey Pearls, and shout out to my guy Chauncey Pearls. He's that dude too. Can we agree Haney is above pound for Bam and Pep? No, we can't agree on that. We cannot agree on that. Bam Rodriguez on my list, and it's subjective, is higher than Devin Haney. He's higher. I got him higher still. And this is my point. We're going to talk a lot about activity for the rest of this show. We need to reward the behavior that we want to see. We need to incentivize the behavior we want to see. So if Bam Rodriguez and Canelo Alvarez are out there fighting consistently, they're outpacing other fights as far as activity, we need to reward that behavior. We need to incentivize it if we want the same thing from other fighters. That's what we want, right? So we need to incentivize this behavior so we see more active fighters, because to me, the big plague in boxing today is inactivity from fighters. Now, a fighter fighting once a year, we're supposed to be thrilled about that. Fighting once a year now makes you an active fighter. No, that's a part-time fighter. That's a part-time. Now we're being thrilled. We're thrilled. We're throwing parties if a fighter fights twice in a year. Canelo and Bam are outpacing these dudes as far as activity. And if you want to hold them to a higher standard, fair enough. But at least admit that when you're holding these fighters to a higher standard, you're doing that for a reason. And the issue that I see is these dudes are holding, and it's a journalist too, they're holding fighters like Canelo and Bam to a higher standard without admitting that they're holding them to a higher standard, because they're not treating David Benavidez the same way. They're not treating others the same way. So when Bam Rodriguez fights quarterly, they're holding Bam to the same standard, or they're trying to. There are fighters fighting once a year, right? And they put on a great performance. Yeah, they fought once a year. It's easier to put on a great performance. But if Bam Rodriguez is fighting quarterly, right, and he runs into a matchup that's not that favorable to him, but he still gets through it, what we don't do is say, and look, it's fair to say maybe we're pre-anointing him. Fair, Chauncey, fair enough. Maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong. I don't know. We'll tell over time. But the thing is, and what's beautiful about a fighter like Bam Rodriguez is we're going to get the answers quicker. We're not going to have to wait 5, 6, 7, 8 years down the line because this dude is fighting once, maybe twice per year. This dude's active. We're going to get to the truth quicker. And I appreciate that. I appreciate the fact that after fighting Carlos Cuadras, going up 2 weight classes on 6 days' notice, after beating and knocking out Sor Rungvisai, he fights a guy like Israel Gonzalez. Turns out Israel Gonzalez was a tougher matchup than we thought. It's fair to say, maybe Bam, maybe he's not up here, maybe he's a notch down, maybe so. Fair enough. But what I would tell people, what I would just throw out there in the pot for people to put under consideration is when a fighter is fighting quarterly, there's a higher chance that if he's fighting 4 times a year, that he's going to be in there, that maybe they misjudged the talent of Israel Gonzalez. Maybe this was supposed to be a tune-up, but maybe they misjudged, and he's in there in a tough fight. And he realized early on, rounds 3, 4, 5, I'm in there with a tough fight tonight. I got to figure my way through this. I can't lose this fight. I got momentum. I just beat Quadras. I just beat Ronvise. I'm starting to enter pound for pound top 10 lists, or I'm close to it. I need to keep this thing going. I can't lose this fight. I got to figure it out. He's got a guy in Israel Gonzalez who the output is high. He's going after Bam. He's walking him down. He's going to the body heavy, and Bam's got to figure this out as the fight goes on. And that's the thing that I was impressed with Bam, is he figured it out from round to round to round. And as the fight went on, he got better. And he figured out a way to, in my opinion, win a comfortable decision. Now, one of those scorecards were way too wide, but I thought he won a comfortable decision on the scorecard because he figured it out and he beat a tough fight. And you have fights like that as you come up. Great fighters have fights like this where they end up being tough fights and they end up being in there with a tough guy. And this is what fighters used to go through. They had to fight. They couldn't just sit back once or twice a year, pick fighters, whoever they want to fight. They had to go out there and fight. They had to go out there and win the fights, not just on paper, not just mythically, but they had to actually go out and do it. And Bam is at a point where he's actually has to go out there in the real world and win fights, even if they end up being tougher than they expected on paper. And that's what he did on Saturday night. And I thought he won a comfortable decision. And what I don't want to see is Bam Rodriguez fall down pound for pound list. And it's your pound for pound list. You can do whatever you want, but reward the behavior you want to see. Do we want to see more active fighters? So we're going to knock a guy down by winning a close decision. We're going to knock him down because he had some resistance, and we didn't expect that much resistance. We're going to knock him down the pound for pound list, and we're going to drop him below a fighter who hasn't fought possibly since Bam Rodriguez fought in February, May, September. And Bam is likely going to announce his next fight in the next couple of weeks for December. What do we want to see? Do we want to see activity? Do we want to see tough fights? Do we want to see good matchups? Or do we want to see fighters fighting once a year? Hand-picked fights, hand-picked opponents. What do we want to see? What's better for boxing? What makes this sport more sustainable? Activity, inactivity, part-time fighters, full-time fighters. What do we want to see? What do we want to see? So I just think there's a lot of false narratives coming out of this weekend. And that's what I want to concentrate more on in this show, is pushing back on the false narratives before they gain some traction. Because what I saw from Bam Saturday night is him winning a tough fight, him keeping momentum going, him winning comfortable on his decision, and him keeping things rolling and staying active. That's what I want to see. So I'm not going to come on here and overly criticize him from one fight. At least he was out there. What are these other dudes doing? Some of these dudes who fought in May, Benavidez fought in May. What's he doing? It'll be Wednesday. Wednesday will be 4 months to the day Benavidez last fought to Lemieux. When's his next fight? When is it? Any announcement? Nothing? No? Crickets? No announcement on his next fight? Al hasn't given him his marching orders yet? You want that? You'd rather that than the dude fighting in a tough fight 3 months after his last fight? And that was 3 months after his last fight? And he's going to be fighting again 3 months from now? I'm supposed to be calling the dude who's a part-time fighter a boogeyman? Is that what I'm supposed to be doing? I'm off code? Am I off code? Y'all let me know if I'm off code. Let me know. Chauncey, appreciate this super chat. Chauncey's my guy. That's my dude. Completely different standard for Canelo, it seems. And it is, but that's fair, right? Heavy is the head that wears the crown. More risk, more reward, but what comes with it also is more criticism. I get it. I'm completely on board with that. And it's fair to criticize Canelo in spots. It is. What I'm saying is when it goes overboard. And then when you do it, and you don't at least admit to the fact that you're holding him to higher standards, at least admit it, and at least admit why you're doing it. You're doing it because he's the greater fighter. You're doing it because he's the better fighter. You're doing it because he's already cemented his legacy. Everything Canelo does from this point forward is what we call down here in South Louisiana lanyap. It's icing on top of the cake. His legacy is already cemented. He's already a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's already one of the greatest Mexican fighters of all time. He's already top 100 all time, whatever you want to call him. But he's cemented already. Everything going forward is lanyap, icing on the cake. At least admit you're holding him to a higher standard than his peers. But y'all don't want to do that. Appreciate you, Kid Gruesome. Salute D Nice, my guy D Nice. I'm trying to get everybody in the chat. I got limited time today. I got about 40 more minutes before I got to go pick up my little kids. What's good, Calix? Appreciate you, base old man. Time for millennials to say Bam was exposed. See why? And that's right. The millennial boxing fans. He was exposed. He lost some rounds. Exposed. See, Bam. See, told you. Told you Bam wasn't that great. Told you. Look, you want to see the dude fight once a year? You want to see him fight once a year? Because Bam, I'm sure he's logging on. He's like, damn, what do I have to do? What do I have to do? I fought 3 times already this year. Some of these dudes haven't fought at all. And they're criticizing me. All the things to criticize in boxing, and they rested on me. I'm sure Canelo has the same thoughts. It's like, and I saw him at the post-fight press conference. He's almost like, dude, what is this? What do I have to do? What do I have to do? Like, are you ever happy? Are you guys ever happy? And I understand people were upset about how the fight went out and paying money for the fight. I get it. I get all that. I get it. All I'm saying is, there are other things you can criticize more heavily than that in boxing. The more you fight, the less you dazzle. See that right there. That's better put than everything I just said. Brief, brevity is the soul of wit. That's it right there. Spot on. The more you fight, the less you dazzle. The more risk you put yourself in, the less spectacular you're going to look. So it's easy to look like the boogeyman when you're fighting 3 times in 21 months. It's easy to look like the boogeyman when you're fighting a dude. I don't. Let's get to the Canelo Golovkin fight. Let's first concentrate on the fight, and then we'll work outward from there. That's what we'll do. And I want to concentrate less on the fight because I don't really have any hot takes from the fight, but there's a lot in the periphery going on that we need to address because like I said, we need to address the false narratives. We need to. This was just a big stage. This was a chance to make a huge splash and have his coming out party. And I feel his performance was like, well, fair enough. Blueprint is out on Bam. Canelo versus Golovkin 3. Coming into the fight, I thought it was going to be the most entertaining fight of the trilogy. Wrong on that. Coming into the fight, I said hammer home the decision -150. Don't even pay attention to if Canelo's going to win, Golovkin, prop bets. Don't pay attention to it. Hammer the decision -150. I did. Won a bunch of money in Vegas. It paid for my fight ticket. And it was beautiful. That it was just easy money. That was just easy money. Sometimes you got to take the easy money that they put out on the table, and sometimes they do. And that was easy. It was easy. So won that one. But as far as the fight goes, it was evident to me early on that Golovkin was not the Golovkin from 4 or 5 years ago. It was evident that he was parring out shots. He wasn't able to sit on his shots. The reflexes weren't there. I'm just sitting there about 20 rows up, just watching it, and it's just evident that he's not the Golovkin from 4 or 5 years ago. It's just not. What was also evident for me going from rounds 1 to 8 and watching Canelo, observing him, and he's observing each round. He's winning each round. He knows it. He's winning each round. And whether we can say Canelo is a little past, I'll get to that in a minute. But what I was observing is after each round, Golovkin is dapping him up. You know, they do the touch gloves, and he's doing that between each round and going back to his corner. And Canelo's going back to the corner. He has to be thrilled. He's like, this is the best case scenario for me, Canelo's saying. I'm easily winning these rounds. I'm not being hurt. I'm not going to wake up a sleeping monster. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to try to knock this guy out. And that's when I knew I had the bet won, because I just knew Canelo's not going to step on it at this point. He's not going to try to wake this dude up because the angles were there for him to throw these big punches. And that's why it's a little tough to figure this thing out and how far, because Canelo is past that career arc, that natural one, right? It's a semicircle. It goes like this. When you're at the top, that's your prime, right? That's your prime. And what boxing fans don't seem to get is you don't stay in your prime long. You just don't. Especially a dude 17 years into his career, almost 70 fights in, you're not in your prime anymore. You're just not. So there's a lot out there about Golovkin being well past it. Canelo's past it too, guys. You don't stay in your prime for that long. You're not 17 years into your career in your prime. You're not. So what I do know is in that career arc, he's on the other side of it right now. How far down? I don't know. It's tough to tell from this fight. And the reason it's tough to tell is because strategically, Canelo's looking at this. He's looking at Golovkin dap him up in between rounds. He's winning every round. He's like, I'm just going to keep going with this. I guarantee you, they're in the corner. Canelo sitting in the stool. They're thrilled on how this fight is going. They're thrilled. This is the trilogy. This is the rubber match. We expected a tough fight here. We didn't really know what to expect. Golovkin was going to come out. And the Golovkin that we fought 4 or 5 years is not there anymore. The guy we fought 4 or 5 years ago is not walking through that door, and they knew it at this point. Now, Golovkin, his output was way down. He's pawing shots out there. Very limited in really sitting on power shots. And he started to do it 9 through 12, and I think that was a strategy. I think they knew we can't fight that way throughout the fight. We just can't. So we got to try to conserve energy until the last 4 rounds, possibly championship rounds. And he showed flashes in 9 through 12. And I think that's why people were getting excited in comparative rounds, because even though he's doing that 9 through 12, I don't feel like he's definitively winning those rounds. I said it to Steve Kim after the fight at the bar. I was like, if they would have read 120-108, I wouldn't have been mad. I wouldn't have been mad. But I just think Canelo was thrilled at how the fight was going, and he wasn't going to step on it. He wasn't going to wake a sleeping monster. He was going to end this trilogy. He was going to coast to the victory, and that's what we got. We got a lackluster fight. I wasn't thrilled with the fight. It wasn't entertaining, to be honest, but I was thrilled with the event. Going out to the event, and I implore everybody, at some point, you got to go to a big fight in Vegas. At some point, you got to do it. It's something, if you're a boxing fan, that you have to have on your bucket list. Because I love the small shows. They're affordable. I love having closer access to the ring and the fighters, and it's more affordable. I get all that. But a big fight, you got to go to one. You got to go to one. And it was just a great event, and that's what Canelo gives you as a fighter. Now, as far as Canelo's performance in this fight, I would have liked to have seen him step on it. I would have liked to have seen him try to get Golovkin out of there, but it just was never going to be in the cards. So what I'm left with, and there were other smart people that I was talking to after the fight, and we all feel like Canelo is starting that descent a little bit. Now, how far down he is, I would argue not that far down. And that's not a criticism of Canelo, because that's something that naturally happens. And believe me, although Golovkin looked old in this fight, there are other fighters out there that Golovkin could still probably give trouble to at 160 without naming names. And I have the fear, from things I was hearing Saturday night, I have the fear Golovkin's going to keep going on. He has belts to defend at 160. That's something I heard from somebody, overheard from somebody in power, that he's likely going to end up defending next year. But I'd like to see Golovkin retire, obviously. He's done. First ballot Hall of Famer. Done enough for me. I'm a fan. But he looked well past it. But as far as Canelo, it's tough to say how far the descent He's down, but he's definitely on the other side of that career arc, which is natural. People shouldn't get mad at me for saying that. The Canelo super fans should get mad at me for saying that because you don't stay in your prime forever. You don't. You're almost 70 fights in, 17 years into your career. You're eventually going to start to trend down at some point. And I think that's what we saw a little bit Saturday night. It's tough to say how much of that we saw, how much of it was the hand injury, how much of it was him just strategically coasting to victory. But I saw angles that Canelo clearly would have exploited 4 or 5 years ago that he did not exploit. He was a little slower to the trigger on. So that descent has started. The issue with that for boxing, and to me, this is the bigger story than the actual fight. And this is why I wanted to focus on the periphery, things outside of the actual fight, a lot more than the actual fight. Because there are things that people aren't addressing out there. Journalists aren't addressing them. Boxing fans aren't addressing them. And if we don't address them, it's going to be a serious issue 4 or 5 years from now. D-Style and I did the exercise last week. What would the boxing world look like if Canelo Alvarez didn't exist? And to me, it was a bleak outlook. Every other point in boxing history, if you took one guy out that was the face of the sport, you had other guys in the bullpen to call out. Some points, several other guys. Some points, 2 or 3 other guys. But in this case, other than Anthony Joshua, who do you have? Who could step in if Canelo decided tomorrow, he said, I'm going to play golf. I'm going to the links. I don't want to fight anymore. I'm done. He decided to just retire. Who's the guy? Who's the guy to take over as the face of boxing? You need one. It's a key ingredient in boxing. You need a face. You need a guy that casuals can point to and say, yeah, that's the dude. That's the dude. I can't tell you, like, I told people I'm going to Vegas this weekend. I'm not going to be home. People inviting to me some things. They're like, what are you going to Vegas for? I'm going to see Canelo fight. Everybody knew who Canelo was. American fight fans. Just regular run-of-the-mill dudes who don't follow boxing. They know Canelo. Yeah, I like Canelo. You going to see Canelo? That's what's up. If I would have mentioned anybody else, they wouldn't have known. He's the face, and you need a face of boxing. Canelo's that. Canelo goes away, who's the face of boxing? So my worry, my concern after the fight is, all right, he's clearly on the descent now. I don't know how far down, but it's clear. And he's clearly segueing back into a twice-per-year fighter. That's clear. So if he has 4 or 5 more years left, being 33 years old, I believe he is, 4 or 5 more years, you got 8 to possibly at the most 10 more Canelo events. And I think at least one of those is going to be in Mexico. I think at least one of those is going to be in UK. How many more big American events are you going to have where the casuals can go to and enjoy? And who do you have warming up in the bullpen for when Canelo segues out? Who's there? Who's the next star? I can point to great fighters. There's a lot of American talent coming up. Bam. Shakur. We're going to see Shakur this week. And Shakur is that dude. As far as a boxer, he's that dude. Devin Haney. Boots. Virgil. But do you see a star in any of those guys right now? We see potential, right? But how are you going to realize that potential if you're fighting once per year? Boots Ennis. He's fought a round and a half this year. Is that right? When's the next fight? Virgil just fought for the first time in 14 months. Some of that was due to him, some not. But when's he going to fight again? Y'all trying to make David Benavidez the boogeyman. He fought 4 months ago. When's his next fight? When is it? So what I'm saying is Canelo was successful because he went direct to consumer. He said, I'm going to go out promote myself. I'm going to promote myself. I'm going to constantly fight. When it was called, he knew how to run his career. I'm early in my career. I'm going to fight 6 times this year. I'm going to fight 7 times this year. And then naturally, when I get to that point in my career, I can fight 3 times per year. And then even when he's making 45 to 50 million per year, he's still outworking these dudes who are fighting once per year. That's the thing. He's making 45. He's making 50. And he's still coming back 3 months from now and fighting. He's fought 6 times in the past 21 months. And he's out earning each of these dudes by a ton per fight. And he's still working. He's still working. Because he realizes what it takes to be a star. He also realizes that it's not just about business. It's about legacy. This is a sport after all. And it's what strikes me when I hear Dimitri Bivol say something like, he says something to the effect of, early in his career, he wasn't worried about the money. He was worried about the sport, and the other stuff was going to come after. And he nailed it when he said that. And that's why Dimitri Bivol, I hope he has success. I hope he's the guy to beat Canelo and run with it. He's fighting Zerto in a couple months. Because he understood that if I just focus on my craft, that stuff's going to come later. It's going to come later. And that's the process that these younger dudes now are not understanding. And such is life. Such is life. I worked a ton early in my life. I'm at a point now where I'm working the least I've ever worked and I'm making the most I've ever made. But you put in the work early. You put in the work early in your life. And these dudes who should be fighting 5 to 6 times per year are fighting once to twice per year in their early 20s. At least Bam and his team recognize that. I'm 22, 23 years old. Why not fight 4 times per year? I'm a fighter. Shorten the training camps and fight actual fights. Bam and his team, to their credit, they realize that. Now, Bam may or may not become a star because he's a lower weight class guy. It's tougher there. But he's going to be successful. He's going to be a legend. I'm telling you that. But what I'm saying is, we're at a point now where we have to start worrying about these things. We're at a point now where Canelo is going to be out the door 4 or 5 years ago. We have a limited amount of events now. That time's ticking now. It's ticking. That hourglass, the sand in that hourglass getting less and less and less. So you got to get to a point where you start to warm somebody up in the bullpen. And we've always had the recycling process in boxing. We've always had, all right, this guy's on the way out the door. These other 2 or 3 guys are there now. Hand the baton to them. Who is Canelo handing the baton to? Who's ready? Who's up in the bullpen? Who can we call? Who's there? Nobody. And you can't naturally have that process if you have everybody working part-time. Everybody seems to be lazy now, from the networks to the promoters to the managers. They're all taking their high minimums. They're all doing the easy work. Promoters don't have to battle with other promoters to get their fights on the network anymore. Promoters are taking the highest site fee, no matter where it is. They're not looking long-term. They're looking at building their fighter. They're looking short-term. They're not properly promoting the events, which means they're not properly promoting the fighter. And the fighter isn't properly promoting himself when there's no event. Because when the promoter doesn't have an event to promote, they're not promoting the fighter. And even when they do, they're not properly promoting the fighter because they're not properly promoting the event because they already got their money. So in between, the fighters aren't even properly promoting themselves. There's one thing I got to give Ryan Garcia at least, is that's another guy that dudes around my neighborhood know. I follow him on Instagram. I love all the work he's doing on Instagram. I follow him on Instagram. They know Ryan Garcia. They know when he's fighting. I got to give him that. But once again, even with Ryan Garcia, you have to back that up. And that's my point with Canelo and Anthony Joshua is Canelo and Anthony Joshua had built-in fan bases much like Ryan Garcia does. What's the difference? Canelo was consistently, organically building up that fan base by staying in people's faces, by fighting. Even when he wasn't fighting the competition you wanted him to fight, he was still entertaining and knocking guys out. But he was still consistently fighting and beating top competition. I've talked about it ad nauseum. They told him not to fight Austin Trout. He fought Austin Trout. They told him not to fight Mayweather. He fought Mayweather. They told him not to fight Lara. He fought Lara. They told him not to fight Golovkin. He fights Golovkin 3 times. You don't have to fight Derevyanchenko. He fought Derevyanchenko. Fought Danny Jacobs before the Canelo fight. Could have threatened the Canelo fight. Could have threatened his big payday. That's Golovkin. That is. I'm talking about Golovkin with Derevyanchenko and Danny Jacobs. But these guys, there's a reason they're being rewarded on the back end. they've consistently put in the work. Canelo has consistently fought guys. Oh, when Canelo was at 160, if he moves up to 168, he's got a guy there, Billy Joe Saunders, with lateral movement. He has trouble with lateral movement. He has trouble with the jab. He's got a guy with the jab, bigger guy, lateral movement. What happens? He knocks out Billy Joe Saunders. So Billy Joe Saunders at one point was all wrong for Canelo until he wasn't. Canelo is fighting the fights. Canelo is building up an organic fan base, and he's kept them there. He's kept them there by fighting. He's kept them there by continuing to be Canelo. The only person who can separate himself from his base is Canelo. The media can't do it. These internet trolls can't do it. These fighters who aren't active can't do it. Only Canelo can do it, and only Canelo can do it by not being Canelo. But he continues to be Canelo. Same thing with Anthony Joshua. All Anthony Joshua has to do is continue to fight top competition, continue to fight tough fights. Even if he were to lose 4 out of his last 6 fights, he's still Anthony Joshua because he's still behaving like Anthony Joshua. Why is this so difficult to understand? I talked to Cotto about it. Shout out to Steve Kim for hooking up the conversation and let me be a part of it. And the one thing we kept going back to is you weren't afraid to lose. And Cotto kept saying, why are people afraid to lose? I'm being a fighter. Steve Kim's telling you didn't have to fight Josh Clottey. Why fight Josh Clottey? Cotto's like, yeah, that guy had muscles here. His head was hard. He fought him because he was a fighter. And I'm not saying any of these guys are above reproach. I'm not. I didn't like some of the things they've done in the past with catch weights. I didn't like some of the fights that Canelo had. But overall, you can't lose the forest through the trees. You got to look at this thing on a macro level and say, overall, all of this is a net positive for the sport. Canelo is a net positive for the sport overwhelmingly. And I'm convinced, man, this dude doesn't have a hand injury. Canelo doesn't have a hand injury. He's got a back injury from carrying the sport. He's got a back injury for carrying the sport of boxing. He's outworking these dudes. He's making 45 to 50 a year. I mean, a fight. And he's still outworking these dudes. So when Canelo comes out there and says, hand injury, need to give myself a rest. Need a break. And by the way, that's one of the signs, one of the hints that you're on the other side of that career arc, right? We said it with LeBron. When LeBron starts to be a little more injury prone, that's when you're up there, right? And it's natural. It's not, you're not going to stay in your prime forever. It's natural. So when Canelo starts to have these injuries, these little nagging injuries, I'm hearing about other injuries, that's a sign that you're on the descent. How far down, I don't know, but it's a sign that you're there. So what I'm saying is when Canelo says, I'm going to lay up for 9, I'm not going to fight again for 9 months at least. I'm going to take a break, give my body a break. These other fighters have to be hating that because Canelo has been carrying the sport. Canelo's always been there. Oh, if we don't get the Canelo fight, we don't get the Canelo stimulus check this month in September, we got December. Canelo's saying, your stimulus check that you were hoping for, not coming in December, not coming in February. You got to wait till at least May to have a possibility. And Canelo has every right to do that because, like I said, I'm convinced the dude has a back injury from carrying the sport. But when David Benavidez fans hear, oh, Canelo's not coming back to May, then they start their nonsense. And they're starting their nonsense because it's the gnashing of teeth, right? And I'm convinced David Benavidez, he has fans, and he showed that in the last fight, but I'm convinced that most of these dudes aren't David Benavidez fans. They're just using David Benavidez as a pawn to criticize Canelo Alvarez. They do this with other fighters as well. They do it with 160 Charlo. They did it with Boo Boo Andre because Boo Boo Andre doesn't have any fans. But magically, when it comes to Canelo, Boo Boo Andre has fans all of a sudden. But when it comes to David Benavidez, I'm looking at this in the same span, the past 21 months, the same span Canelo fought 6 times. Canelo fights December 2020. Canelo fights February 2021. He fights May 2021. He's got to wait till November 2021 for Caleb Plant and the PBC to get their nonsense together. He fights again May 2022 against a top 10 pound for pound guy. He becomes undisputed in the same process. He fights again September 2022 and puts to rest the trilogy. All the time, he's accomplishing things, despite what people are saying, Euro bums. And I guarantee you, if these dudes that fought Canelo had fought Benavidez, Charlo, they wouldn't be Euro bums anymore, right? But they fought Canelo, the Euro bums. But all the time he's putting in this work, David Benavidez fights 3 times against 0 title holders. And I'm supposed to pull out the small violin and start gnashing my teeth because David Benavidez isn't getting the fight, and David Benavidez isn't getting the fight because Canelo's ducking him. Canelo doesn't want to fight Mexican fighter. Oh my God. And they're still running with that narrative, and they're still trying to address Benavidez to that comment. They're still trying to attach him to that, even though Benavidez had nothing to do with the conversation. They're still trying to attach that, and they're trying to because they're trying to devalue Canelo and what he's accomplished. And that's the issue that I have. And at least if you're going to do that, at least admit that you're holding Canelo to a higher standard, and you're holding Canelo to a higher standard because he's a much greater fighter. But instead, they're going to do all that nonsense, and claim that David Benavidez is the boogeyman. And maybe he is. I think Benavidez is seriously talented. I give him a decent shot to win the fight. I think it's a great fight. I would love to see the fight in May 2023. If it is, I'm going. No matter where it's at, I'm going to see that fight. But what I'm saying is, if Benavidez gets that fight, it's not due to anything Benavidez has done. It's a fight falling in his lap. They expect the throne. They expect to just plop down in the throne with their feet up. They expect the crown to fall in their lap. Seriously, what is David Benavidez doing to earn this shot? Other than just being number 2 in the division based off of eye test and potential and talent that we think he has. Anything these dudes get from Canelo is a stimulus check. They're putting their feet up and expecting these fights to fall in their lap. And look, David Benavidez may want these fights. I saw some comments that my guy Sanch sent to me on Twitter earlier that David Benavidez is frustrated, and he's saying the PBC and our fighters look bad because we're not fighting each other. He's saying, I wanted Caleb Plant after the May fight. I called him out, and Caleb Plant had nothing going on. So why am I not fighting Caleb Plant? He's being off code. Al Heyman's probably mad at him right now, and he'll probably have to retract that comment. But what I'm saying is, he's right when he says that. And what is David Benavidez actively doing behind the scenes to try to get these fights? Why is Caleb Plant next month fighting Fredo Durrell? Why? Minus 1250 favorite. Why is he fighting that fight? Benavidez has nothing going on. Before that fight was signed, Caleb Plant had nothing going on. 160 Charlo has nothing going on. Morrell Jr. has nothing going on. Why are these PBC fighters not fighting each other? And why are they not active? Jermell Charlo, that's my guy. Big win in May. Why are we waiting until January? And that's what I talk about is I'm wondering if this recycling process isn't going to happen now where we have a new face of boxing that Canelo can hand the baton to. Because how are we going to do that if these dudes aren't active early in their career at least? They have dudes in their early 20s. I'm told Boots, he's going to fight twice this year. That's fine. No, it's not fine. Why is that fine? He's had like 4 minutes of work this year. When's his next fight? Why did Virgil? When's his next fight? And I like Virgil, but when's his next fight? I like Shakur. Why is Shakur fighting twice this year? And I like the level of competition Shakur's fighting, but 3-4 times a year. Follow the ban process. There's no reason. Like they brainwash people. They brainwash people into believing that these dudes can't be more active than they are. They brainwash people into thinking that if you criticize the system, you're criticizing the fighters. You want to put fighters in danger. No, all I'm asking is what's in it for me as a fan? Why should I be okay with this? How is this sustainable for the sport? Why should I believe David Benavidez is a boogeyman? Why should I believe that? He knocked out 87 gazillion-year-old David Lemieux. And what else? What else did he do? He's fought 3 times in the past 21 months. If David Benavidez really wanted the Canelo fight, first of all, he could have had the Canelo fight right by now if he didn't drop the $10 million bag on the damn scale. And Caleb Plant flew in from Nashville and picked it up. To his credit, he scooped it up. And look, man, once again, I like David Benavidez. I like him as a fighter. He's fun. I don't want to criticize David Benavidez, but all I'm saying is this narrative that he's the boogeyman, dude, this narrative that Canelo is ducking him. He would have had the Canelo fight if he didn't drop the bag on the scale. He dropped his belt for not making weight. Canelo would have fought him. The track record tells us that. What makes David Benavidez different than Austin Trout, Floyd Mayweather, Erislandy Lara, Golovkin 3 times? Everybody said you shouldn't fight that fight. They were even saying that about Billy Joe Saunders when Canelo was at 160. You shouldn't fight that fight. He's all wrong for you. He fought all those fights. And I'm supposed to believe David Benavidez is different? Based off of what? Not track record, not trends. The only trend that I can see here is we have a fighter who would have gotten the fight had he not dropped the bag on the scale, had he not kept his nose clean. With all due respect, because once again, I like David Benavidez. I like him as a fighter. But I'm not pulling out the small violin. Oh, David Benavidez should have got the payday. Canelo's definitely avoiding him. Canelo's ducking Benavidez based off of what? Canelo's telling these dudes what to do. Fight each other. All you got to do is fight each other. And you go to the top of the line. Fight each other. If you have nothing else of value, you don't have a belt for me. I fought these other dudes because they had the belts. And if you would have had the belt, if you would have made weight and kept your nose clean, I would have fought you. And you would have got the $10 million. You would have had an opportunity to try to beat me in 2021. And there's no reason to think otherwise. But now, the new narrative, since people have nothing else to criticize, apparently, is Canelo is ducking Benavidez. Benavidez is the new boogeyman. And once again, he looks talented. He passed the eye test. I like Benavidez, but Canelo is not ducking Benavidez. Stop. Stop it. If Benavidez wanted to fight, if this wasn't just going to be a stimulus check that falls in his lap, he would have said, look, Al, knock on the door. PBC headquarters. Al, get me the fights. Get me in people's faces. I can knock people out. I can knock anybody out on this planet at 168. Even if you got to move me to 175, I'm a big dude at 168. I'll fight somebody at 175. You don't want to do it at 168. Give me the fights. Every time Canelo, here's a strategy. Every time Canelo fights, you give me a fight the same month. I want to stay fresh in people's minds. Even if I have to take a pay cut. Hell, even if I have to take a pay cut. For the greater good, I know on the other side of this, on the other side of that rainbow, I got a huge payday with Canelo if I pull this out. So even if I have to take a pay cut here, I know on the other side is the big reward. Not only legacy-wise, but money-wise, financially. Give me the fights. And if you're not going to do that, why are there fighters underneath our umbrella at 168, 160 that I'm not fighting? I have access to these fighters, right? You want to keep it under the same house. You want to keep it under the same umbrella, the same roof. Why can't I fight these guys? Al, knocking on the door again. Why can't I get the Caleb Plant fight? I just fought in May. Caleb Plant had nothing going on. Why is he fighting Fredo Durrell? Why is he getting that fight? I called him out, Al. You didn't hear me? You didn't hear me? He should have been knocking on the door after that fight. Sunday morning. Al. Calling him. Al, give me the fight with Caleb Plant. Fredo Durrell? No. I'm the man here. I'm the man. I'm David Benavidez. I'm the boogeyman. Give me the fight. And that's going to get me closer to Canelo. That's going to give me the Canelo fight. If I fight Caleb Plant and I knock out Caleb Plant earlier than Canelo knocked him out, I'm front in line. And I call Canelo out from the mountaintops after the fight. And you put that fight in Phoenix, or you put it close to Phoenix. Hell, put it in Nashville. I don't care. I'm calling out Canelo from the mountaintops. I'm saying, I knocked out this white dude. I knocked out Caleb Plant from Nashville, Tennessee before Canelo did. I look better than Canelo did in this fight. Give me the fight. Give me the fight. And that gets me closer to Canelo. But none of these dudes are doing that. And Al is back there pulling the strings. And he said, no, you're going to fight who I tell you to fight. I'm keeping all my pawns on the chessboard for when Canelo comes back to the table in 2023. I'm not putting anybody in danger. None of you guys are fighting each other. Charlo, you're not fighting. You're not fighting Morrell Jr. Morrell Jr. is not fighting Benavidez. None of you are fighting Caleb Plant. I don't care. Even though Caleb Plant is expendable, even though Caleb Plant already got the Canelo shot and lost, he's still not expendable. I'm still not giving you access to him. There is no reason, despite what the PBC, because Al doesn't even do interviews. That's why I don't understand why these dudes cap for the PBC all the time. Their advisor doesn't even give them any access to him. Doesn't even do interviews. He sends other people out to do that for him. Doesn't even care enough about the fans to do any interviews. And he's not going to put any of these guys at risk. And that's why when any of these guys land a Canelo shot, because they eventually will, and they know it. That's why they're not putting themselves at risk, and they're saying all the right things, PC, and they're going with all the false narratives. It's going to be a stimulus check. It's not going to be something they earned. And even if they win that fight, they don't have the track record to believe that after they win that fight, they're going to behave like a cash cow after that. They're going to make people feel a certain type of way. Because I guarantee you, the reason all those people were in Vegas that I saw Friday, Saturday, Sunday, when I was out in the desert, the reason all those people were out there, and the reason people will be back in May 2023, no matter where Canelo fights, in September 2023, is because he makes them feel a certain type of way. And that's why I wanted to focus on the bigger picture, because the fight was the fight. Lackluster fight. No hot takes. But the bigger picture here is Canelo will continue to be Canelo because he gave people moments. He gave people moments by properly marketing himself, staying consistent to himself, staying true to himself, entertainment. And he also took fights that were very risky that he didn't have to take when he took them. And he consistently gave people top competition. He consistently gave people entertaining fights. He consistently gave people moments, because at the end of the day, it's about the moments. It's about the fights. And the fighters who give people the moments and the fights will get the spoils long term. And the issue with these dudes is they're detached from reality. They're detached from the real boxing fans. And that means they're detached even further from casual fans. Casual fans don't know them because they haven't done anything great. They haven't done anything great. So we can say what we want about the fight. The fight wasn't good. But the people I saw over the weekend in Vegas, despite the fight not being good, they had a blast. They had a blast. And they were there because Canelo gave them the moments throughout his career. And they were cheering for Golovkin after the fight because Golovkin gave them moments as well. And they realized that Golovkin is forever attached to Canelo because of the 24 rounds they gave us in 2017, 2018. But what I tell you, the troubling part about all this is it's clear that the descent has started. The transition back to a twice a year per fighter has started. That gives us 8 to 10 more events, 8 to 10 more Canelo events. Who are we warming up in the bullpen? And the answer is nobody. These dudes just aren't active enough. Like I said, I can give you a list of great fighters, but which one of them is going to be a star? Which one of them is going to be the guy when I tell people 5 years from now, I'm going to Vegas for this fight? Oh, I know that guy. I know that guy. Yeah, he's a star. He's a household name. Yep. Who's going to be that guy? Who's that dude? How do we keep this recycling process going? Who's going to be the guy to catch that baton if all these dudes are fighting once per year and they're not putting in the work to attach themselves to a greater audience? Canelo put in that work. I threw out the comparison, the contrast to Ryan Garcia, who is a household name. People know him from, casuals know him from Instagram, but it's not going to be sustainable if he's not putting in the work in the ring. Canelo, Anthony Joshua had the same type of effect on people early on, but they were able to grow their brand over time because they organically built up a bigger base, because they made people feel a certain type of way. People understand when you don't have to take that risk. It's what we were talking about with Cotto Saturday night. You didn't have to fight Josh Clottey. You fought Josh Clottey? Why would you fight Josh Clottey? Fought him. He said, I'm a fighter. That's what I do. Fighters today aren't fighters. I had to fight. He was there. He was there. Had to fight him. Top 10 guy, 147, Josh Clottey. I got to fight him. Got to fight him. Why can't these PBC dudes fight each other? I don't get it. And why am I a bad guy for pointing this out? Why? They're really trying to attach Benavidez to the Mexican fighter comments, and it wasn't about Benavidez, and it wasn't even what they were saying. That's annoying. There, I saw Roy, man. It hurts my heart. I love Roy, but Roy's out there saying, "Oh, I'm chicken fighting. If you're a chicken fighter, you're supposed to." It's nonsense. He fought Chavez's son. I mean, he's supposed to fight Jose Benavidez's son. Why are you making it about things it's not supposed to be about? This had nothing to do with Benavidez. Canelo would have gladly fought Benavidez had he not dropped his belt on the scale. Make weight, keep your nose clean. You would have got the $10 million payday. You would have fought him already. If Zurdo wins this fight and he becomes a direct threat to Canelo, and Canelo told you that Saturday night, it's like, guys, come on. What are we talking about here? It's like, what are we talking about? Why are you making this comment into something it's not? If Zurdo were to win that fight and call out Canelo, guess what? There's a good chance you get Canelo versus Zurdo in May. He's got no problem with fighting people. He's not going to not fight a Mexican if the Mexican is a direct threat. Oh, he doesn't fight Mexican. What Mexican is he supposed to fight? What Mexican was he supposed to fight in the past 5 years? Name one. I'm still waiting. But closing thoughts, not the best fight in the world, obviously. Golovkin looked aged. I hope he retires, although I know he's not from what I heard Saturday night. I fully expect him to come back in 2023 and defend at least one of the two belts, if not both, at 160. Canelo, he's definitely on the descent. I just don't know how far. And you got to start warming somebody up in the bullpen. The boxing world has to, because you got 4 or 5 more years before he's got to hand the baton to somebody else. And I guarantee you, his hand does hurt, hand injury, but he's got a back injury too from carrying the sport. Canelo's back has to hurt from carrying the sport. You know the meme, like the kid is holding the stick and he's like, do something, do something, do something. That's me to these PBC fighters at 168. Do something. Do something. 160 PBC fighters, do something. 168 PBC fighters, do something. Morrell Jr., maybe you should fight Benavidez. Maybe Benavidez should fight him. Benavidez could have fought Caleb Plant. 160 Charlo can fight somebody, anybody. Just fight. For the love of God, fight somebody. Fight a bum off the street. Just get a fight date. Good Lord. And I'm supposed to be out here feeling sorry for these dudes. I'm supposed to be out here criticizing Canelo right now? Yes, the fight was lackluster. Maybe it's not the fight you wanted to see. I get all that. Criticize it. But when you get to this other stuff, when you start to swerve, good Lord, when you're swerving into this other stuff, when all of a sudden the new narrative has been Benavidez, oh my God, look how scary he is. Canelo's avoiding. Canelo's scared of him. You're criticizing the dude that gave you 6 fights in the past 21 months, became undisputed, settled the trilogy, fought a top 10 pound-for-pound fighter in a weight class north of him. You criticize, you're overly criticizing him. All the problems in the boxing world, and you came to rest on Canelo. And you wonder why we continue to get what we get in boxing. Inactive, part-time fighters not going for greatness. Maybe it's because you're overly criticizing Canelo and you're calling the dude who's fought 3 times, fought half the amount of fights, 3 times in the past 21 months, against trash competition, no title holders, and you're calling him the boogeyman. The hell is wrong with you? Maybe you're the problem. Maybe it's you. I wouldn't blame Canelo, man, if he just said tomorrow, I'm going golf. Done with y'all. I'm going golf. But overall, man, props to Canelo for giving me a great weekend as a boxing fan. Loved it. Loved Vegas. Met some great people. Shout out to Steve Kim. Great dude. And allowed me to talk, be a part of the conversation with Cotto. Got to talk to Cotto for an hour. That was beautiful. That was beautiful. And people that I've met in Vegas know from the past, I have a rule. I don't take pictures with fighters and ask for autographs. I had to lift that rule. And Steve's like, go take the damn picture. Take the damn picture. Took the picture, talked with him for an hour. It was a good time. Great time with great people this past weekend. Fully expect to be attending more boxing fights going forward, meeting more new people, meeting great people. And wasn't the fight I was hoping for, but still a great event. And my message would be, stop over criticizing Canelo. There's a reason Canelo is Canelo, because he's taking risks and giving people the moments that they adore as boxing fans. And stop overly shouting out people and fighters who just aren't doing that much. Anything these dudes get at 168, if a Canelo fight falls in their lap, that's exactly what happens. It's falling in their lap because they're not doing anything to deserve it. I'll be damned if I call David Benavidez the boogeyman. I'll be damned. My guy Nando. And Nando, you need to come out to a fight, man. We need to link up. We need to decide on a fight. Link up, have some drinks. First round's on me, lunch on me. We'll link up at a fight. Have a good time. I know I'll never get press credentials for a fight because I criticize promoters and fighters too much. That was some of the talk over the weekend too, but I don't care. I enjoy going to watch the fights as a fan anyway. I don't want press credentials. Not my thing. I want to slam, throw down some cold ones, enjoy fights, have a good time. And definitely had that over the weekend. Appreciate everybody for tuning in and appreciate everybody in the archives. Great archive views. Make sure you're leaving your comments below in the archives. I'm out, man. God bless. Peace.